Wake up, it's the Tim Stevenson Show. What's up, y'all? It's Tim from the Tim Stevenson Show, and today I got a special guest, friend of mine from way back in the day, best man at my wedding, grew up together. Mr. Miguel Tejeda from Warner Brothers is about to be in the building. I wanted to talk about, I just had a heated conversation with my brother-in-law. And
Right.
so my brother-in-law is a staunch, hardcore Republican, right? Black Republican. Not that that matters. It's not that he's a Republican that bugs me. What bugs me is when people who are Black, especially family, are trying to think that they're educating me on my history.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's originally from Jamaica, lived in England, and then came to the U.S.
Right.
So the conversation of, because he called and he says, "Oh, what do you think about all this race stuff?" And I said, yes, racism exists. I think people also weaponize racism, and the use of the word racism gets weaponized a lot, but that doesn't diminish the fact that racism exists. If it didn't exist, we wouldn't be having the conversation. But to act like everyone's being duped but you bothers me. You know what I mean? You're like, look, everyone's experience is different. I don't care whether you had a good experience with it, somebody else didn't. It's just different,
And that's what's so difficult about the conversation is everybody's perception,
right?
How they lived life, how they were raised, whether it be Black or white,
right?
That actually dictates your dogma in the whole situation,
right?
And that's the hardest part is that when we start pointing fingers from a righteous standpoint, that's when we get in serious trouble, because that's when we're not listening to each other. We're just trying to, hammer people with our own dogmas and our own ideals and where I came from, and whether like I could be Black or I grew up in a different with different opportunities than somebody else did. That means that the other person's experience is irrelevant, and that's not true either.
Right.
That's the hard part today, is that we're not listening to each other.
No, everybody's just having a screaming match. And there were some people online that we grew up with that actually went to Pacifica. Mm-hmm. And one of the girls, white girl, I think she was the same age as us, but every time they post, it was like, I can't believe, people were asking me about white privilege, and, we weren't privileged. We had this and we didn't have that and whatever. And I was like, so I kind of intervened, right? Because it was very like, they're mad that they have privilege. And I go, it's not about the things in privilege, at least not for me, at least not for a lot of African Americans. So look, it's not the privilege of you having something and we don't have it.
Right.
The privilege is what you didn't have to deal with that we had to deal with.
Right.
I said, when I worked at Flaky Jake's, a white woman grabbing her purse while I walk by when I'm bussing tables. The white kid didn't have to deal with that because she didn't look at him like a criminal. She looked at me like a criminal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you say, well, how do you know that was because you walked by? And I would say, well, maybe it's because her husband said out loud, he's not going to steal your purse while you're grabbing your purse. That's why I knew. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or walking home from Pacifica or getting pulled over by a cop, asking me where I was going, did I live in the neighborhood, things like that, that if you were white, you didn't have that problem. They're not asking you if you lived in the neighborhood.
Right.
You know what I mean? I said,
Right.
so you have to understand, it was like the privilege of not having to deal with that, the privilege of wanting to be included in all lives matter. You know what I mean? And having that conversation. But when people just blanket statement stuff because they don't understand, they should understand and then talk about it. Don't just go, well, this doesn't exist. So like with my brother-in-law being Black, I feel like a lot how I feel like sometimes with like a Candace Owen or somebody. You go, you're spending your whole day trying to tell Black people that they're being duped and that they're stupid, basically. You're telling them that they don't understand. Slavery was here when the British came here, and they start going down this history lesson. And I go, what does that have to do with me right now? I said, we're not here because things don't happen. We're here because things do happen. And so I got into a heated conversation with my brother-in-law. And at one point I said, look, racism is not a Democrat or a Republican thing, but you keep painting the picture that Democrats are ones pushing the racist agenda. And I go, there's no difference between the white Democrat and a white Republican who just happen to be racist.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Politics. So what you're doing is trying to prove that your party is better than somebody else's based off that fact. And I go, look, you can go to the country club that's all Republicans and someone's still going to drop an N-bomb when you leave. Why? Because they're just racist. It don't have to do with anything. It has to do with your politics. So leave the politics out of the conversation. Just talk about it as opposed to, well, the liberal left is doing this. And back in the day, the Democrats were the ones who were funding the KKK. And then the Republicans are the one who abolished slavery and all this other stuff. And I'm like, none of that, all of it is irrelevant at this point. You know what I mean?
It is truly relevant. I mean, it's something that everybody should understand and learn.
Right.
That's for a different day.
Right.
What we're missing the point, and on a side note, but within this conversation, I was listening to a conversation about the Bible, and I'm not going to talk Christianity, but I'm saying that those who are scholars who try to break down the Bible in its understanding of why in which they did certain things, stoning and all this stuff, I go, you're missing the point of the Bible.
Right.
You're missing what is in the Bible to understand. And in the same respect, in this moment, when people start talking about politics and history and who did what and what did who to who and all this stuff, I go, you're missing what's to be learned in this moment. It's escaping everybody because everybody's going on to their teams of right and left.
Yes.
And, I'm better, we should vote this guy or that guy. That's not the moment. But it has been hijacked.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's where people are starting to be fed this anger and emotion about it.
Right.
When like in the example you just gave with that lady clutching her purse, right? All you're asking for me or for anybody around us and our friends and all that stuff is to understand that moment.
Right.
There's no amount of mea culpas that could ever equal the disparity between you and say like a young white man.
Right.
There's no amount of him going, let me flog myself into black. I'm white. I'm
Right.
I don't like when people do that either, because that's missing the point. Okay, because that's not solving it either.
No.
All anybody's asking for is an understanding of what's happened, and let's move forward.
But
with equality.
And but like you said, it's been hijacked on both sides.
Yeah.
Both sides of that conversation have been hijacked. One, oh my gosh, everybody's racist. That's not true. You know what I mean? But on the other side, it's like the same thing in reverse. You know what I mean? It's like, well, your side is racist, or it's like I forget. I was watching a debate amongst a bunch of kids at a school. I forget what city. And the kid, they're talking about Kaepernick and taking a knee, and they were talking about just about racism in general, right? And one kid was like, yeah, there's a lot of racist problems, and we need to understand this and that and the other. And the other kid was like, I don't understand why people think that people are racist because, I don't think that, right? And the girl got up, and a black girl, she was like, yeah, but when people call me monkey behind my back, and I can hear that. You know what I mean? Like, if I call a white guy monkey, he doesn't take offense to it because it doesn't have anything to do with what he looks like. When somebody calls a black person monkey, they're comparing them to an animal, and it's usually meant to be derogatory, right? So, but like I said, one side is going, you're just mad and slavery was over a long time ago. And I said, but yeah, but the systemic part is that there's a group of people who believe that they're still superior. That's a problem. If everybody's equal, then everybody should be equal. If you two commit the same crime and one's white and one's black, you should get the same sentence. But historically in this country, it used to be like, oh, the black guy did it, and they would go arrest that black guy.
Right.
You never see somebody go, the white guy did it, and then just arrest the white guy. They ask the white guy questions. They cuff the black guy. You know what I mean? So Brian was like, well, you know, I was in a restaurant and my friend sat down, and because they didn't serve us first, and another table came in, she was like, they didn't serve us because we're black. And he was like, well, that doesn't really bother me. And I go, it doesn't bother you. That's fine. It bothers her. Her upbringing is different than yours. Her experience is different than yours. Mm-hmm. Stop trying to tell her what the history is so that she should be okay with that situation. It's okay to be not okay with that situation. Now, do we know that's what it was because maybe the lady didn't see them sit down? I don't know what it was. But the point is the opposite is weaponizing it like you don't know what you're talking about, and it only exists because you keep calling the race card and this and that and the other. And yes, people call the race card all the time. But when like the Karens or whatever that term they're using right now, say stuff like, there's an African American here and he's scared of me. The only reason they said African Americans is because they know the cops will come faster. Because no one says, hey, there's a Caucasian here and he's scaring me. They're going to be like, okay, we'll be there when we get there.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So yes, there is a problem. But I also think the other way around too is like some people, and I've checked African Americans online too about throwing it or going, you're not doing enough and a bunch of crap. And I'm like, don't do that either. That's just as bad because now you're pushing people away anyway. But our friends from Pacifica, I mean, our generation to me was unique, especially in our class. All the guys in our class and girls seem to have this common bond of just humanity, you know?
Yeah.
They've grown up.
It was almost like the last generation of innocence.
Right.
And I only mean innocence in the sense that the internet and the induction of the internet and computers and the way we're all able to, now they're able to connect so much faster, but connect to anything and everything. So you can connect to, you know, bad attitudes, bad, you know, people just spouting off opinions without any research or any actual truth about it. Mm-hmm. But our generation was innocent in the sense that you dealt with the person in front of you.
Right.
Right. So if I knew Tim Stevenson, he wasn't an African American. He was Tim Stevenson.
Just Tim. Absolutely.
Just Tim, because I knew Tim. Right. I talked to him. I knew him. He was going through the same things I was going through. Life was different for you. I understand that now. But in the sense that when we came together, we were just friends.
Absolutely.
But I think that I feel that it really, I kind of want to say that it really doesn't have anything to do with racism. It's this filter that we all have. Mm-hmm. The filter of, for me, it's the understanding comes down to, you know, kind of like the saying, am I my brother's keeper?
Right.
Right. Brother doesn't have anything to do with African American. Am I the keeper of the person next to me, the human being next to me?
Right.
So we talk about racism as the actual point of the spear, but I don't necessarily think it's that. I think we're just using that.
Well, okay, so
yap at each other. You know what I mean? It's just
right, and that would be nirvana if everybody thought that way. But in the history of this world, there's always been a hierarchy, no matter whether they were all Greek or all Italian or all Jewish, whatever. So yes, you can.
Let me ask you this: where are we trying to get to? What is the
equality?
Okay, but you have to expand on equality. Though.
Okay, so
equality
means if
ultimately, where are we trying to get? Like, what is this all for? What are we trying to get to?
Well, we're trying to get to a place where someone's, you know, especially like in life and in business and whatever, we're not. I would say, especially with people who are enforcing laws, the laws have to be equal for everyone.
Sure.
You can't put a bigger punishment on one person or another based off their skin tone or where they come from, whether it's African American, whether they're Chinese or Latino, right? But that doesn't happen a lot where you literally have two guys doing the same crime. It's just the same. It's a different approach. For instance, two guys did a thing where they walked down the street, both legal gun carriers. You can carry AR-15 on your back in that state. I think it was Texas, right? Okay. So the white guy goes down the street, just walking, legal gun owner. A cop pulls up, gets out, talks to the man. Hey, why are you wearing that gun right now? He's like, I'm a legal gun owner. Here's my gun card. I have a right to carry it. I just carry it. Boom. Next day. And they're friends, right? Or the next, same scenario, a little bit later on in the day. Black guy walking down the same street. A whole arsenal of cops show up, guns drawn, handcuffed on the ground for the same exact reason. The guy on the ground is laughing because he's a legal gun carry owner. Right. But the response was different based off of what he looked like. You can't tell me that, oh, well, maybe they just decided all of a sudden to everybody draw their weapon on a guy with an AR-15, right? Sure. It's just not the same, right? So there is a difference, and that difference had been happening over and over and over again. They don't ask, like, I was leaving the Four Seasons in Newport Beach, and I'm with, I don't know if you remember Beth Lyons back in the day, right? White girl, blonde, hip-hop dancer, who's like my twin, right? Cop is in the left lane, right? He's in the left lane turning left, and there's another lane next to him that turns left coming down Newport Boulevard. I'm in the far right lane by the curb. I look at her and I go, we're about to get pulled over. Why do I have that instinct? Because it exists, right? Then I go through the light. He throws his lights on. I'm not even going 10 miles an hour. Boom, right behind me, pulls me over. He doesn't even ask me for my driver's license. He goes to the other side and asks her if she's okay. Right. She's not twitching or having a seizure. So now she's pissed because I'm like, she's like, how'd you know we're getting pulled over? I said, because I'm in Newport Beach and I'm black. I'm going to get pulled over. Right? Because people have it that, especially in an area where there weren't a lot of blacks, that if you were black, you might be doing something wrong. Let me go check it out. But if I was a white guy in that car, they don't have the same agenda. Now, if I looked like disheveled, he might. But I was wearing a button-up shirt with a tie and a vest, double G. Right? Right.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So I go, You know what I mean? Or flat out, right? Like a mom, I was dating a girl, this girl, I won't name her, right? And I got followed around. And then the mom comes up to me one day. She's like, I know you're like secretly dating my daughter. And she's like, I have nothing bad to say about you. Everybody says you're a good kid, but my husband is extremely prejudiced. And if he finds out you're dating my daughter, he'll kill her first. Straight to my face. Why? He doesn't like black people. She goes, he doesn't like her dating black people, period. So it exists. So anybody says it doesn't, it does. Now, where does it come from? I don't know. Can I go into the psyche about what it should or shouldn't be? Of course I can. But it exists because we don't live in that world. You know what I mean? So my brother-in-law was trying to tell me like, well, this and that and the other. And I was like, so explain to me black and white drinking fountains. Because black people didn't invent that. Explain to me colored bathrooms. Because black people didn't create that. We didn't create segregation. It just happened. Right?
Yeah.
So you can't tell me it had nothing to do with my skin because it had everything to do with my skin. This place, no Negroes allowed. How do you explain that? You know what I mean? So you can't tell me those people were like, oh, everything's going to be okay. Write a letter to the mayor. It didn't matter. They're hosing down black people in the street, even doing Martin Luther King, right? So a guy goes into a church, a white guy, kills 8 black parishioners. They put a bulletproof vest on him and then walk him to the car.
Right.
An unarmed black man runs away from a cop and gets shot in the back. So, you know what I mean? It just doesn't add up. If we're all equal, why would it matter? Right.
And what I'm saying is, given all that, and given all, and I hear you, given all that, what I haven't heard, other than reparations, other than, you should feel bad about being white.
I don't believe all that.
I don't hear solutions. What what is there to do as a society?
Society has to make everybody equal. Wasn't that what the Constitution says?
No, I know that, but you have the law, and then you have human being. So I'm saying what can be done now to start creating an equality?
If the law would treat everyone equal, we would be done with this conversation.
Yeah, but you have people that enact laws, so you have to have.
Well, then therein lies a problem that'll never go away. Then,
No, I think. Well, if I had to answer that question, I would say, one, people have to stop yelling at each other, and
I completely agree.
Now, and like we talked about in a previous episode, some people are going to have to give a pound of flesh to make this thing move forward.
Of course.
And that pound of flesh is letting go that if I was an African American, letting go that white guy is wrong. And then and vice versa, that the white guy saying that African American is a bad guy or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And that happens. We just probably don't hear about it a lot. But I do that. Like
there has to be more of it. So there has to be certain types of things that we do to get to know each other. Just like we talked about. People
have to change their thinking. That's what you're saying, right?
Exactly. So changing the thinking,
absolutely, I agree with that.
The hard part. It's the solution that is kind of like the.
But people have to want to change their thinking on both sides. There are people who are black that just want to be oppressed, and I don't agree with them.
Yeah, no.
There are white people that say I'm better than you because I have white skin, and I don't agree with them either. You know what I mean? It just you have to change the mindset, but globally, it's hard to change anybody's mind. It's hard to tell somebody that the Raiders aren't the best team or the Patriots aren't the best team. Some people just want to be on their team, right? Mm-hmm. So I agree with the whole conversation about it, but to ignore the fact that it exists, I go, it exists. That's why we're here. That's there were slaves. We're not slaves anymore, but there was still oppression. There was still this. Right. My dad came back from the war, and people still call him the N-word. You know what I mean? So,
no, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So, everybody's mindset has to change. Both sides. It's not just one side. The problem that we're having is everybody's screaming at each other all day long, right? So, as I was trying to tell my brother-in-law, and this is why our conversation got heated. I was like, look, stop trying to tell me about my history. Stop trying to tell me what you think I should know so that I can believe what you believe. I didn't have the same experience. One black guy's experience, not the other same guy's black experience. Right. There are people who have had it way worse than me. Mm-hmm. And there are people that had it way better than me.
Sure.
That's why I live in this.
That's the thing.
You know what I mean?
That's the thing is that, we're not really educated on how to listen. It takes a skill set and muscle that you continually have to build throughout your life to understand how to listen. Because most people are actually wondering how to respond before that person even is done. And that's not even listening. That's not even close to listening.
Right.
That's that. I mean, right now, I think that's just where we're at, still at a fever pitch of, now something that I really don't like is the idea of tearing down statues.
I had that conversation with them too.
No, I'm not opposed to taking them down. What I'm opposed is tearing them down.
They should just put them in a museum.
Exactly.
Put them in a museum. It's still a part of history. It doesn't take away history. History is not a statue, but it represents something that was attached to some hate. But you can put that in a museum and talk about what happened with this person, what happened with that person.
Same thing in Museum of Tolerance.
Same thing.
It's about the Nazis and what happened. Nobody's trying to put that in a box and bury it deep in the ground. You put a museum to it so everybody can understand and learn. Who was Theodore Roosevelt? Why was this, statue made with an African American, an Indian on the side of him? He did, actually learning about him, he did a lot of stuff for African Americans. I mean, he was the first person I believe to have an African American sit at the table at the White House. Mm. So I mean, and he probably did some bad things. So whatever. What I'm saying is, what I don't like is the idea that there is a ignorance out there.
Right.
Sometimes called a mob, sometimes called, whatever, Antifa, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. There's radicals in every group.
But we're not as a society controlling that narrative, which we should. Because when it gets out of hand. That's when we really start not listening to each other.
Well, everybody wants to be right all the time.
Yeah.
Part of the problem. That's the problem I have sometimes with my brother-in-law, is that he wants to be right. He wants me to go, oh, you know, thanks for enlightening me. I agree with you. And I don't agree a lot of times, because I'm like, stop trying to teach me something. I've done your research. I can do my research. Well, I read this thing about the Library of Congress. And I said, yeah, I also learned in my history books that some of this stuff wasn't true. But then he goes, it wasn't true because the Democrats did this. And I go, stop
Right.
with the point. It's
Yeah,
liberal left or the radical right or whatever it is, right? It's just that back and forth. Democrats are this, Republicans are that. Back in the day, the Republican Party was more black, and Democrats are trying to brainwash the black people into believing they like them, and they're inciting the racism, all these things. And I said, what would happen if you just took away politics and just stood in the room with people and had a conversation? You know what I mean? I said, the problem is that everybody's pointing fingers and everybody's screaming and yelling and Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, and nobody understands what it is because there's too many radicals in every group. There's radicals in Black Lives Matter. There's radicals in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party and Antifa and the women's movement and LGBTQ. There's radicals everywhere.
Right.
You know, but to say that everything is bad because of that, you know, the difference is, like for me, say if I'm looking at a bunch of Klan members, right? They're like, we hate the Jews and we hate black people. They say it out loud. We hate the Jews, we hate black people, and we hate Mexicans. Okay. We know because you said it out loud, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're willing to kill and hang whatever for some of their beliefs. Now, are there white people or black people just as extreme? Absolutely. Absolutely there is. Mm-hmm. It may not be as big of a movement as the Ku Klux Klan. They're not burning crosses in white people's front yards, right? But not to say that they don't exist. But I think it's just a bigger dynamic, you're right? So I go, okay. And then LGBTQ, they want to be included. Are there radicals in there? Of course there are. Of course there are people on both sides infiltrating the other side to make it look like it's, you know what I mean? Everybody's got an agenda, right? You're just like, so having that conversation with people lately, I've just been like, stop. It's like a bunch of noise. Everyone's bitching and complaining about everything. And I'm like, at the end of the day, take care of my family. I said, when I wake up, I don't care if it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump or Obama or Clinton or Hillary or Sean Hannity or Tucker or Don Lemon or whoever, right? Because they're not in my life. They're not in my circle of friends and family. All this is playing out on television like a movie all the time. People are screaming in the streets, this, that, and the other way. Well, you know, if they weren't this and this one's bad and da-da-da. And I told somebody the other day when we're going to sway the topic to Kaepernick for a minute.
Sure.
Because this guy had a valid point. This kid was like, I don't think Kaepernick should take a knee, you know, because, you know, the national anthem is pride and we fought to even go to the game and this and that and the other. And the black girl was like, the problem with the national anthem that he's having is that we don't feel equal. So why would he stand up for a flag that he feels like is betraying him? That's how he feels, right?
Right.
And then the guy brought up a good point. He goes, everybody's patriotic about a football game. He goes, how many of you in here stand up, put your hand over your heart when you're watching football on your couch? Mm-hmm. Nobody stood up. Mm-hmm. He's like, you're only patriotic at the football game. You're not patriotic at home.
Right. And it brings up a good point that a lot of us take for freedom and ability.
Right.
See, for me, and I'll admit that sometimes when I don't really watch that much football, but you know, if I'm watching a game or something and the national anthem, maybe I'm watching the Super Bowl and it comes on, I don't really stand up and put my hand over my heart, right? So
I don't, but it does. But I'm at a game and it makes me feel. I'm like, oh, well, like in the Olympics when they play the national anthem, I'm like, America, you know what I mean?
You know? Yeah, and I know how the flag can be represented. See, I don't feel the flag is the inequality. For me, if you've ever watched like Save It, like what really upset me this week was I saw the rioters they defaced a World War II monument.
Those are rioters.
rioters or whoever, whoever's out there.
Definitely not protesters.
Yeah, exactly. But they defaced the World War II monument.
It's just stupid.
And I thought to myself, I go, this is why people get upset when people take a knee during the flag, because it's not the flag is a representation of everybody that's been before you, black or white, because there have been a lot of African Americans that fought in wars.
I'm a military family.
Exactly.
My dad fought in Vietnam. My grandfather fought in World War II.
Now, I don't have a problem with taking a knee, but I'm saying when people get upset, it's not the flag isn't what you're trying to fight. The flag is just a representation, for me, of what you have the ability to do. So he has the ability,
to take a knee.
To take a knee.
Absolutely.
It's because of that flag. So it's almost kind of a lot like...
It's a double-edged sword because it works both ways.
Yes.
My father and my grandfather fought for the ability to do that, just like the ability to say, I don't like the president without getting assassinated. So why is it any different than you loving the flag for the same reason, but it's not okay when somebody does it when they're doing the national anthem? Right. Now, paying to have military at a football game.
To me, he doesn't come out for the game. Or maybe to me, he doesn't just come out.
They never used to come out. That's what I'm saying. So,
I'm just saying in general. Whatever.
But see, I feel the same way. Just don't come out because they were saying they were supposed to. That's why they come out, right? It was like, you're a part of the team. You have to come out to the national anthem. And like, well, we're going to protest national anthem because we don't believe that and that's whatever the stance you take. Prior to that, they never used to be out during the national anthem ever. They would stay in the tunnel. And after they got the national anthem, then they would come out, fireworks would go off and smoke would go off, and both teams run onto the field.
Right.
But the military pays to advertise during the games, right? So they always leave out the part that the only reason he takes a knee instead of sitting is because the Marine guy requested that he take a knee because that's what you do for a fallen soldier in the military. He's like, you can respect our fallen soldiers and get your point across if you take a knee, but sitting is unacceptable. So then he took a knee. But they don't tell that story, right? They just say, he's unpatriotic. If it was like it, I'm going to burn his jersey and burn the flag. And I go, burn their jersey and this, that, and the other. And he's disrespecting the military. I go, first of all, football and the military aren't synonymous.
Not really, no.
There's nothing about football that screams military. It's not a military thing. It's just a sport.
Right.
So because we have a flag in front of a lot of things, right? It doesn't mean that you're disrespecting a flag because half the audience is still sitting down, right? It's just that he happens to be a football player and he's high profile. But if you ever go to a game, you've been to a game, everybody does not stand for the national anthem. Half people are drunk.
Unless they got a full beer in hand.
Right. So do we crucify everybody who doesn't stand for the national anthem or just Kaepernick?
But I think that there's for me as in life right now, there's always nuance in conversation,
right?
In what you do. So for me, when he comes out and says that it's the flag and it's America, it's the ideals of America, right? That's not who you're fighting. You're not fighting the ideal of America is equality. Now we may not execute that well at all, but
that's the point,
right? The ideal of America and the flag and what it stands for, it does stand for equality. We just do not execute that well at all.
Well, it's the same point he's making.
Right.
Hypocritical to say it stands for everybody except your skin color, right? So. Right. Yes, it's supposed to represent equality. That's what the United States is. But if you don't exercise equality, then you feel left out of that United States. He's making the same point you just said just now, right?
But in the same instance, he says that America is a bad place.
No, he was fighting for injustice for police officers killing unarmed black people. That's exactly what it is. It ain't nothing to do with America's a bad place. That was the stance. Everybody tried to hijack that and turn it into all kinds of things. But the initial thing was, he says, I'm kneeling because I want to make a stand against police brutality for unarmed black men. That's exactly what he said.
Sure.
Had nothing to do with hating America at all. If you hated America, why would you take a meeting with a Marine and then change your way because the person that fought for your country asked you to do so?
No, I understand it. Yeah,
You know
right.
what I mean? So it's just been, that's been hijacked too, and everybody just jumped on. He's not this, he's not that, and you know, like it's football. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's football.
at
And
the end
don't
of
get
the
me wrong,
day, nobody's a martyr that much, even for your own country, because most people don't even donate to veterans. And veterans are on the side of the freeway. This is the same people you're talking about.
he can do whatever he wants.
Right.
That's his right.
Yeah.
But we have to start conflating America, with the people who have been charged with executing America, meaning executing the ideal of what America was supposed to be built on. Equality, yes, everybody can say that there hasn't been equality. Okay, we as people need to execute that better. But America in itself, when you start burning flags and you start, accusing America of being the worst place on earth, while you sit there with an iPhone on your wrist and the freedom to, run crazy around this place and nobody touches you, I have a problem with the idea that you're blaming America.
But I don't think he's ever said he's.
No, not Kaepernick. I'm just saying in general now.
There are people like that, and I'm the first person to say, look, America's got a lot of problems, and we need to fix a lot of things, and we left a lot of things out of the story, and there's a lot of people who are jumping on both. But I will never say I don't love America. I will never say that. You know what I mean? Because it is a land of the free, right? Now we have a lot to work on, but it's
the land of the free.
Huh?
But it's the land of the free. But we just have to make sure that you feel that freedom as much as I do. But that's my fault. That's not America's fault. That's my fault.
Right. Everybody has to take a look at themselves at the end of the day, and they dig deep and go, because see, we grew up, like you said. I think in our class of Pacifica, in the class of '89, and a couple classes before us and after us, we just felt like a family of people and brothers. You know what I mean? I mean, people like Kirk Morris still hit me up on Facebook, Sean Laguana, Trung, Colin, Joey, Scott Bellini, like all these guys, Tony Owens, everybody, and girls too, right? Because we have this camaraderie of Pacifica people, whether or not it was with you, basketball, like Nagatas, Mike Nagata, Larry Nagata, and people like that, or Vince, and remember Pedro and people like that. We all still have this thing. It's like a weird class of '89 bond, right? Now, I'm sure there's other schools who have that kind of bond and just our people. Because even through all this crap, no one ever disrespects me when I have anything to say back on anybody's feed, because I'm not coming from a malicious place in the first place. If I just say something educated, I go, this is why the privilege is not that, it's that. It's just an education. I said, it's not about you having more. It's about feeling left out. Now, I also finished that sentence, but I will never take back the fact that all my brothers and sisters at Pacifica were the best people I've ever met. Sure. That's my experience. Now, there's probably a kid who lived in Compton and his experience is completely different.
Of course.
You know what I mean? On all fronts. White kids getting beat up by black and Asian kids, Filipino kids, or black kids getting beat up by white kids. It happens depending on where you live. So my point with Brian was, hey, I said, everybody's experience is different. You can't put a blanket statement on everybody and say, if you knew your history, this wouldn't. I said, no, this isn't just history. We're just talking about the now, because I'm not living in the past, right? I'm living in today's time. Yes, every change in life came with conflict. Every time, whether it was a civil movement, whether it was Jim Crow, whether it was Martin Luther King, whether it was apartheid, wherever you were at, right? It all came with conflict, because that's how change happens, right? And in the history of this world, since the beginning, there's always been a slave class of people. That's why you have kings and queens that have an empire.
Sure.
Just go watch a movie. It's like, go watch Lord of the Rings. Were there slave people? Yeah, the orcs were working and doing stuff. Or in Star Wars, all these people were doing this. And, because they were building the pyramids. There were slaves, no matter what color they were. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But in this country, yes, one of the best countries in the world. I said, but it didn't come without stuff. It didn't come without differences. It didn't come with things. I think it's just a jockey of power. If you're in the position of power and you try to enslave, I'm just going to use that word loosely because it's not really slavery, but like diminish a whole class of people to gain your wealth, right? Because that's what you would do, right? All the people who worked in the crop yards are building this guy's castle. All the people who worked in the field, we're building this guy's business. All the people in the mailroom don't get paid as much as the executives. That's how it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we need the guys in there and digging in the minefields, or else we wouldn't have coal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, it is what it is, you know. But if you actually treat people, no matter what craft they have, the same, but just like any power, and it could be black on black, white on white, whatever. It's just power, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell me that Kanye doesn't shit on people. You also can't tell me that Will Smith has never shit on people, and they're not the same kind of a person.
Absolutely.
It's just that they have an elite personality, and everybody else is kind of like beneath them. And then they get on television and be like, "Oh, I really donated money to the school." I said, "Yeah, but you're flying private jets and acting like you care about the world. Okay, cool. Maybe you do give back, like Oprah at a school." But I've also heard horror stories about Oprah. But like, who knows? You know what I mean? But it's subjective depending on what your life is like and what you feel, you know. But who am I to say anything other than what I know about my own life, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that I can only speak from where I've come from and
Right.
where I'm willing to go, and I'm willing to learn. But what I'm not willing to do is I'm not willing to take blame
Right.
for a history book. I can sit there next to you, arm in arm, and say all of this is bad. Okay, that's history. That was yesterday. Where are we going from here?
I wish everybody would do that. I wish everybody would do that, because if everybody, black or white, said, "We're moving on from this point,"
yeah,
stop living whatever you feel in the past, in the present, which is prejudice or this or that about any sort of person, we would be in nirvana. But people are, for some reason, just want to like argue their point and stick to whatever it is in the past, right?
on both sides.
I try my best to like be pulled over by cops and go, all I gotta do is educate them on who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Did I have a problem with the police? No. I mean, I got pulled over and got yelled at and screamed at for no reason. And then I kill them with kindness, and then they start calling me by my last name, right? Because that was my experience. And I knew, what's the point of going, "Oh, you pulled me over because I'm black"? I said, look, in the neighborhood, if the black crime was bigger than any other crime, it's going to be logical to get pulled over, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I got pulled over in well-to-do neighborhoods because I was a well-to-do kid, and you're like, I just like that professor that got pulled over because someone said, "Oh, this black guy stole the car." He's a professor at the university. You know, the doctor who got cuffed because he was handing homeless supplies so that they would, during COVID, so they would have food.
Mm-hmm.
Someone said, "Oh, there's a black guy here giving out food." I'm like, why do you cuff him for? Why don't you just ask him what he's doing? You know what I mean? Now, it happens because there's some people who shouldn't have badges, and there's a lot of them that should have badges.
Right.
You know what I mean? But the argument sometimes, like, you know, I had this whole, people ask me like the Black Lives Matter and this and that and the other, because they're taking the radical people and using that as the part that they believe. Well, there's all kinds of horrible people in Black Lives Matter. Yeah. There's also horrible people in every political party. There's also horrible people at the gym. There's also horrible people, you know what I mean? It's like, there's horrible people everywhere. I said, but the root of saying Black Lives Matter isn't to be separate, but people make it that way on both sides. So even Black Lives Matter, or like Black Lives Matter, I've had to check people online all day who go, black people who go, "They should be doing more." And I'm like, no, they shouldn't. No, they shouldn't.
What
Who are you to tell anybody to do anything, black or white or indifferent? If they decide they want to put a black thing and say that's what I did, then that's fine. Who cares? If they don't want to do anything, who cares?
And that's
You know what I mean?
that's where I'm sort of lost at, is that I go, what is it that you want from? Okay, so I say that not in the sense, I say that from me.
Right.
So I'm what, 48, never really saw, and I grew up in Orange County.
Uh-huh.
So I can understand that I can understand our history. I can read our history. I can learn from my African American brothers and say,
right.
I get that you live differently, and okay. So what do you want from me now? Like, when you come at me and scream at me Black Lives Matter, I go, yes, you do. And they go, no, you don't get it. You need to do more. I go, well, what do you want me to do?
Well, I say the same thing when people scream anything. When they're screaming Black Lives Matter, they're just yelling. If you just go, hey man, Black Lives Matter, then people go, oh, okay, cool. Black Lives Matter. They do matter. Or when you say, hey man, Black Lives Matter too, right? That's what I'm saying. Black Lives Matter too. And they go, all lives matter. I go, it's just dismissive. So now you're just doing the opposite. Now you're just yelling. You don't like the word black, because I'm like, look, Black Lives Matter also. You know what I mean? And I have to put it in perspective with people, right? Mm-hmm. Just like if your kid falls on the playground, right? Mm-hmm. And somebody goes, oh my gosh, somebody helped that kid. And I went, all kids matter.
Yeah.
At this moment, that kid matters.
Yeah.
At this moment, that kid matters. Yes, every kid matters, but it's about that kid just right now, right? So when I explain it to people that way, they go, get it. I go, because every time, if you say blue lives matter, and I would be like, all law enforcement matters, firemen matter, Everybody it's dismissive, because I feel the same way about it, because people are like, oh, cops are bad. Not all cops are bad. We get that. But the problem is happening in law enforcement, so that's why it's the target, right? If it was happening in firemen, they would be the target. But in our experience, right, it's been unarmed Black people and white cops, and yes, there are Black cops that are just as bad as white cops when they're bad, right? No one's doing that. But statistically and on film, when you choke somebody out, when you stand on their knee and they're dying and they're saying, I can't breathe, when you shoot them in the back when they're running away, it's unacceptable. Now, if you fire those bad apples, we would never have a problem with the police officers, because you would go, hey, if he's doing some shit just because he's got a badge, it's unacceptable, and there was repercussions, done. But historically in this country, they've gotten off, right? Oh, they're acquitted for some reason because they don't tell on each other, right? Because one cop that did tell on somebody, other policemen were putting dead rats on his house, and his kids come out of school and they're putting his name on something with a dead rat because they were ratting on cops. I'm like, yeah, but if they're bad in a position of power, they're bad. So eliminate those ones so we have more room for good cops.
And doesn't it seem at this point in time where we're at in this whole fever pitch of everything going on, fixing the police almost seems like easy, right?
Should be.
I mean, it almost seems like we've gotten so far away from that, so far away from it, that what actually happened needs to be fixed. Yes. Laws, training, all that good stuff. I mean, I couldn't even go into it. I don't even know the extent of what would need to get done, but we've come so far from that. And when I hear or when I see the anger and frustration, that's completely warranted. Okay.
Right.
But then you have to tell me what you want. Now, like what can I do for you? Have your back. Make yourself equality. Okay. You got it. To me, you're my equal. And I think most of America kind of feels that way.
Well, the problem is they don't, too many people believe what's on television, right?
Yeah.
That's another problem. Because I think his name is Chris Swanson. He was the sergeant from Flint, Michigan.
Yeah.
Who said, hey, I don't want to have a battle with you guys. We're people. We put our riot gear down. What do you want us to do? March with us. So they marched with the people. They had zero problems. Right. Everybody was peaceful. If we can replicate that, it's just about actually being a person. Now, they're doing it onesie, twosies at a time, which is great. Like, I know really good cops. I know guys that care about people. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of guys that have chips on their shoulder, and they use the badge as a way to get out their frustration. Mm-hmm. We got to have mental health checks. We're the only country in the world where it's easier to be a police officer than in anything else. And you get a weapton, you only need a GED to be a cop.
There has to be a lot that goes on there. I mean, actually, to be honest with you, I'm surprised there hasn't been a reckoning there to begin with, because you can't give somebody that authority and that power and not check them all the time. Because the thing is that, like most cops say, we're just human beings, and when you give a human being that could have a bad day, that may be scared, that may be fearful, that if you're trying to fight a 220, 250 guy, and I'm like a 180, trying to take this guy down, and I don't have enough training, that guy's going to shoot the that guy's going to shoot the other guy because
that's why you call for backup, right?
Yeah, and that's training, and that's
training.
Trying to figure it out. So I'm surprised there hasn't been a reckoning there for a long time.
If it would just be some sort of mental health checks with police officers like you would do on a person, right? Yeah. You got to do a background check on a person. You know, most of the cops that I know that are good cops were crazy teenagers. You know what I mean? Because if you're a criminal, you know how criminals think. You become a good cop for that. You're like, oh, okay, I know that. You know, not that they were criminals, but they get it. You know what I mean? But there's got to be more training. I mean, soldiers get trained way more than police officers.
You have to understand violence.
You have to understand violence, and you have to have the mindset of a martial arts person. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to take a situation with composure. Now, if someone's screaming in your face, is that an attack? No. Maybe they're just angry. If they're coming at you, by all means, you point a weapon at a cop and you get shot, that's what you get. But you don't shoot an 8-year-old boy with a BB gun.
Yeah, and that's where it's a difficult call, because you're not looking at it from a standpoint of, I see an 8-year-old boy. I see somebody turn around with a gun at a certain height.
Okay, we grew up with BB guns.
Yeah, we did.
We grew up with BB guns. We grew up with squirt guns that look like real guns.
Right.
The part of your training is to know the difference.
Well, you get an
8-year-old, it would be insanely odd for an 8-year-old to actually have a real weapon in a park, right? I'm not saying it didn't, but you got binoculars, you got whatever. Do some surveillance before you just pull out a gun within 2 seconds of some 8-year-old with a squirt gun, because kids play with guns. They sell them at Toys R Us.
Absolutely, and that's where the third party panel, or however you want to call it,
right,
take a look at that, because and that's where I in any situation you got to look at the truth and the details, not the emotion.
Right.
You know, a cop gets a call, says there's a gunman. Yeah, there's a guy running around with a gun. So already he's thinking, oh my gosh, I may not even survive this. Yeah. Right. So he goes into it. Now, granted, you're correct. The training has to be able to
assess,
to understand, okay, where am I at and what's going on? So I got to be careful that there are other people out here. So I can't tell you the outcome of that.
Right.
But I do believe that we need to, I think everybody needs to understand that job is not particularly common.
It's not easy.
Common to everybody's job. You don't go to work. I don't get in my car thinking that at any given moment somebody's either going to attack me, kill me, or whatever. But
if I was a cop, I would. I get that.
Right.
Absolutely. So somebody posted a picture, and it was a guy running away, going like this, but his pistol, or even if it was a taser, it was black. Right. And they was like, see, it's hard to tell. They were trying to justify that last guy getting shot. I go, here's the difference in your training. When you're attacking somebody that you don't know what's going on, yeah, that guy deserved to get shot. But when somebody takes your taser off you and is pointing it at you, you don't shoot him in the back. You know it's your taser. It's not like he pulled out another weapon. He took the taser from the cop, right, and pointed it at him, and then the cop shot him after he turned around. And I go, you knew it was your taser. So your judge is a judgment call. Yeah. You go, he ain't gonna kill you with the taser. Okay.
There's a few more things about that, but I agree.
But you know what I'm saying? Because my point is, when Nicholas Cruz killed 17 people right here in Parkland,
right,
and he ran down the street, and then he was walking in the neighborhood, they didn't even draw weapons on him. Mm-hmm. Not one. They took him down and they cuffed him and put him in the back of a squad car.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got people on the street who may or may not know he forged a $20 bill and he's dead. Why? And there were 4 cops. Why? Mm-hmm. And they already had him cuffed. Why?
Relevant questions.
They could have closed the door. I don't care if he's kicking and screaming in the back. I've seen people do that. Close the door. That's why they have the bars in the police car. They took him back outside, then stood on his neck. You're like, you could have just left him in there and let him. If he wanted to be an asshole, there's nothing he can do.
I would say that we are too quick to jump on to the racism train.
I can say that.
It may be true. It may be true.
I can say that too. But it's not, okay, in this instance, as George Floyd's instance, it's not, I'd tell somebody this, it's not about George Floyd. It's about the scenario that keeps happening over and over again when the person who dies doesn't have a weapon. You are trained to take people down. Right. You are trained to call backup when you feel like you can't do it yourself. If you don't have a partner with you, you call backup. I've been pulled over. They call 6 cops.
But not only that, you are required as a human being who has a shield to understand the moment. And this is such a case study of what is not present today. And so you have the Asian cop, I don't know his name. Mm-hmm. But that was his 4th day on the job.
Oh, damn.
4th day. But he should have been trained or had psychological training to say, listen, if a partner of yours is on some guy's neck and he can't breathe, you're required as a human being to jump in and say, listen, we got it.
But he's not going to.
Well, no, I'm saying that that's what.
As a human, you would. You're being insubordinate to a superior officer. You're not going to do shit.
Yes, and that's where I think.
I'll give an example.
And I agree with you. I'm
pilots do the exact same thing.
Who does?
Pilots.
Pilot.
Right? There's been many instances where a plane crashed because the captain was telling the co-captain that he can't tell him what to do. When the co-captain said, maybe you should put the flaps up, maybe we're flying too low, whatever, and then the plane crashes. Why? He's being insubordinate. He's being told he's not supposed to talk to the captain like that.
Well, let me give you a different scenario.
All right.
Because that's a little bit different. Let me give you this scenario. You got the captain, co-pilot captain. Captain takes vodka bottle out, takes a swig.
Yep.
Puts it back on the side and goes, shh. That's there you go. As a human being, you're going, this ain't right.
Right.
Now, if the pilot goes, I know that these flaps need to be, this is what I'm doing. Now, just trust me, I'm flying the plane. That's right. Different. But you see how the vodka is the same as the knee on the guy's neck. It's not what you're supposed to do.
Correct. But my point is the same. So I'm just doing it from the point of the other person, right? I'm being the co-captain, or I'm being that officer who's only been on the job 4 days.
4 days.
Either they're afraid that if they do say something, that all of a sudden, his buddies are like, "You're a shitty police officer," and all of a sudden you got problems within the district, and that may happen. But that's what happens a lot. Is a lot of people are worried about their job, right? If this captain who's been flying, and don't get me wrong, because we all know, it's known because I've flown with other pilots, that a lot of commercial airline pilots have a cocaine problem.
Yeah.
A lot of pilots also fall asleep while they're flying because it's on autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Co-pilots won't say anything sometimes, like other cops won't say any other cops, because now they're like, why are you trying to regulate? He's got way more flight time than you, or he's got more days in the bureau than you, or whatever. And they don't want issues when they're trying to come up the ranks with people going, this kid's horrible, put him on desk duty. Let him be a security guard in the parking lot at a junior high school. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of these ranking issues with certain people. Maybe that guy was like, don't stand on his neck. And the guy was like, don't tell me what to do. We don't know. You know what I mean? Because we weren't there. But obviously, no one said anything, or they said it and it was fall on deaf ears. Right? Mm-hmm. But when the man underneath your knee is saying, I can't breathe, he probably can't breathe. Now, are there people who cry wolf? Absolutely. But why take the risk when he's in cuffs anyway?
Yeah. I mean, but that goes to that goes to where I go.
Right.
The deeper conversation. I don't stay on the surface of racism and
no, this is just about humanity right now.
This is the deeper conversation.
Right.
Is the humanity. We're losing our humanity.
Absolutely.
I see constantly videos of two people beating each other up, and everybody pulls their cell phones out.
Oh yeah,
right?
It drives me nuts. Nobody's broke up that fight. You know what I mean?
Or somebody going crazy on another person by just a fluke or whatever. Nobody steps in. Everybody just starts laughing.
That drives me nuts. It drives me nuts.
In the news, I just saw today. Whoever's seeing this podcast can go look it up. A guy, and they have the video. A guy throws a huge one of the big fireworks at a homeless guy. It lands in the guy's lap, and it explodes. I mean, it was one of those big ones too. Yeah. Luckily, the guy wasn't hurt, but you could see the guy who threw the firework running away laughing. I go, there is the problem. We've lost. Now, I don't espouse to the idea that it is Christianity. A lot of people would be. A lot of people say that we've lost our dogma of morality, and we've lost our center within religion. I'm not saying that I espouse to that.
Right.
There's something to it.
Right.
Because we as human beings I have this idea that we as human beings will always slide on our worst selves without a compass, a moral compass to go to.
Right.
Because without a moral compass, you don't ever feel bad about anything. Why would I feel bad?
I hate those videos. I hate when people stand around. But see, here's one example. Huntington Beach High School. Mm-hmm. There was an autistic kid, right?
Sure.
And a group of kids were beating up on him. And this one particular kid is like beating the shit out of this autistic kid.
Right.
So this football player, white kid, and the kid was white. They're all white kids. I mean, but the football player kid came up and socked the dude who socked the autistic kid. And they suspended the football player. I was like, why would you suspend him? He's the one who came to the rescue of that kid getting beat up by people, and you suspend the kid that helped him.
Wake up, it's the Tim Stevenson Show.